Yo, what is going on? It's Lewis here, the crypto beginner, and in today's video, we're going to be going over trend lines. All right, so I have this presentation for you guys, and then we'll go into some examples. This presentation is mostly by Crypto Cred, so credit to Crypto Cred for putting this together. So we're going to go over this, and then we're going to hop into some examples, and you'll probably get it relatively quickly. It's not too difficult to understand. Okay, so the first question you have to ask yourself is, what are trend lines? Trend lines are lines that identify trends. Very, very straightforward and simple. A trend is a general direction of the price movement. So that means it's either going up, which is bullish or an uptrend, or it's going down, which is bearish or a downtrend. Higher lows equals bullish or uptrend. Lower highs equals bearish. And I'm going to show you examples of these in just a minute. Trend lines could help you spot support and resistance levels, breakouts, channels, patterns, and other technical indicators. So what's the criteria of a good trend line? What makes a good trend line? Well, 3 touches or more is a valid trend line. 2 touches is speculative. You could do it on 2 touches, but don't put too much weight into it. The more touches the trend line has, the better. If it has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, as many touches as it can, that will give you a lot more confirmation that it's a good trend line. Ideally, the touches should be spread out along the trend line and not be clustered together. So if you have, say, 10 touches within, 30 minutes of each other, or, 3 hours of each other, that's not going to be as good as, say, 10 touches within 15 days or 21 days. Longer lines are more powerful, and price will react more forcefully to breaching them. Once again, this falls in line with the top-down theory that I like to use, which is that if there's a line and it's on the weekly chart or even the monthly chart, if there's enough data, if there's a trend line there, when it breaks that trend line, it will react much more forcefully on the monthly or the weekly than it will if you are just looking at the trend line on the daily or the hourly or the 15-minute or anything in very short time intervals. And finally, usual time frame rules apply, i.e. the bigger time frames are more likely to give valid lines. So that just means that the lines are more valid when they're on the monthly or weekly candlesticks as opposed to the daily, hourly, 15-minute, 30-minute, 5-minute, 1-minute, anything like that. However, you could definitely use them on any time frame you want. It's not really that big of a deal. What I like to do is just start at the top and then just work my way down, and you'll see that in just a minute. So how do you actually draw trend lines? Well, the first thing you do is you connect a high point with another high point. Then you extend the lines to see if it touches any other points to meet the criteria. Then you do the same with the lows. And what you want to do is you want to try to draw from wick to wick. So you want to try to draw to the wicks, but this isn't a hard rule. You can draw from the wick to the candle. You can draw from candle to candle. You can draw from candle to wick. It doesn't have to be exact. A lot of people, they come from Forex and they come from other markets and they say, no, it has to be exact. The crypto space is a totally different space, is a totally different world, and there are no hard rules. Something else to keep in mind is that sometimes pumps and or dumps will spike a wick through a good trend line. The trend line can still be valid. It could still be good in that case. And like I mentioned before, I like doing this via the top-down method, and you'll see that in a second. So here are some tips. The first is that support and resistance levels are zones. They're not magical lines that will hit exactly pinpoint on them every time. Patterns and lines will never be perfect, especially in crypto. Don't be lazy, but don't unduly restrict yourself either. For example, if you get 4 touches and 1 wick rises above, then you get another touch. That wick that rose above, it doesn't necessarily quote unquote break the trend. It could still be a good trend. You never want to force a trend line that you feel should be there, but simply doesn't fit. You want to make sure that your trend lines are valid. You don't just want to be throwing lines in the graph just to make it look like what you want it to look like. Finally, keep an eye out for trend lines that were broken. And this is very good because this is a good indicator that there's going to be either an upswing or a downturn in price. Now with saying that, let's get onto some examples. So what I did was I opened up 5 different graphs and we're going to go one by one and just show you how to do the trend lines on them. So right here, you could see I have IOTA BTC pairings on the monthly chart. And this is where you get your trend lines from on TradingView. And you can see it says Trendline right there. Now you could click this button and then you could drag it anywhere you want on the graph. Now, if you click this button right here, this is the magnet tool. And this magnet tool lets you draw very precisely. It snaps the drawings in place near price bars to the closest open, high, low, or close value on the chart. So I like to click this button to get that magnetic tool, and I go from the high down to the low. Now this actually doesn't look too good to me as a valid trend line because it only touches right here, and then I don't see any other touch except for right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it down and see if this works. Well, this works because it has a touch right here, and it has a touch right here, and then it has a touch right here, which is the reversal. So if we go now into the weekly, maybe it could get a little bit clearer. Now, sure, this could be fine, I suppose, but if I take this and I just bring it up just slightly and I put it right here, now you can see there's a touch right here, there's a touch right here, there's a touch right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, and there's a touch right there. So that's 4 touches. That is a pretty valid trend line. So now I could take this magnetic tool off and I can bring this down here. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 touches, and we can move into the daily chart. So now I'm at the daily chart. Let me zoom out just a bit. And now this looks sort of good because it has all of these touches. Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nearly 7 touches. And if we have this line right here, which I accidentally drew earlier, but if we draw out this horizontal line at the support, at where it had the support levels, you could see this is actually the same support levels that we had back here, which means that it is forming this pattern. I do, however, feel like if we zoom in a little bit more, we may be able to find something slightly more accurate. For instance, right here. If we do this, now we have the same touches, and we come back up and we take this right here. Now we have the touch right here. Then we have the touch right here. Then we have the touch right here, right here. It's range bound right over here. Then it breaks through, and then you could see it comes back and it touches right there. And then it touches again, and then it touches again, and then it touches again. And then it even touches again, this time right here. So this seems like the more valid trend line to me for IOTA. And now that it has broken through the trend line, we could see that it is starting to swing upward. Now, usually what happens is if there is a trend line forming, right when it breaks through the trend line, it will spike higher. So you could see a lot of people had calls in right here and they drove the price up. However, it stopped exactly at this resistance level right here, and it just couldn't get past it. And now it is coming up again, and we will probably hit this resistance level again. And whether or not we fall back down to here is a question. However, you can use another trend line and see if this actually holds. However, this only has this touch right here, so I wouldn't necessarily call this a trend line yet. However, I would say that it does look pretty positive for the moment being. And so that was the trend line on IOTA. Now let's move on to another trend line. Here we have ADA on Binance on the monthly chart. And this clearly there is not enough data, so we will go down to the weekly chart and see if there's a data. Okay, so what we want to do, go up to Trendline, click right here at the top, go down to the bottom and click right here. And we could see this is a pretty good trend line. If we tried to do it all the way from the very, very top, you could see that that's not a very good trend line. It only has 1, 2 marks. You can say that this right here is a mark that tests it, but if we bring this down here, then these 3 weeks give me a lot more confidence. So now let's go down from the weekly into the daily. And what we could do is we could just make it a little bit more clear. So we have 1, 2, almost 3, almost 4, and then if you zoom in, around 5 on the rebound, 6 on the rebound. However, looking at this, you could see that this actually closed below it, so perhaps this would be a little bit better. Not like it makes that much of a difference. And once you see that this has broken this trend line, that can give you perhaps a little bit more confidence that it's going to not continue to spike down anymore, but instead have this new support level where it bounced off of right here and right here. And when we zoom in, you might want to go from the low to the high and see if there is some type of trend line forming. And as of right now, this is the trend line that I see. So it touches right here, and then it comes up and it comes back, it touches right here, comes up, it comes back, it touches right here, and it comes up. Perhaps it will come back. And now what you can say is that it will touch somewhere in this zone if it decides to come back down. So you could see this might be a good way to just consider something to consider when talking about your entry points and exit points as well. Moving on to Ven or Vechain, there's not really enough data there on the monthly, so we'll go to the weekly and we'll see what we could do. Firstly, there was this uptrend right here from the high to the low, and you could see boom, boom, boom. And if we look at this and we go from the high and we go to the low, that looks 1, 2, 3 touches. So that's verified. And then we go down into the daily to just make it a little bit clearer. It actually is pretty clear on the daily. So what you could do is you could draw some sort of support. And FYI, support does not always have to be horizontal. It could be anything else as well. You could say if it was available, that support was, diagonal downward like this, but usually I like to keep it horizontal unless I see a clear diagonal support, such as what we saw before, which is right here. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 touches. So this seems to be a good support level that is not necessarily horizontal. Going back to Vechain, if we zoom out, you could see now we have the trend line. It's a downward trend line. And if we extend this, we could see that it just broke out. So perhaps it was a good time to buy. Okay, let's look at Icon now, or ICX. If you take this, you bring it down here, that's not really too good. What about up here? This one might be a little bit better. This does have 1, 2, 3, 4 touches, and maybe if we extend this further down, and then we go into the daily, it'll make more sense. Usually, like I said, there's a breakout after the trend line stops. So right here, this is a possible trend line with 1, 2, 3 touches. And then also you could say that this is a touch right here. So that's 4. And then it had a nice little breakout. And that's what I usually like to do, is I like to look at the trend lines and I'll see that the price is just getting tighter and tighter and tighter within a particular range. And in this case, the range would be right around here. So you could see it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Eventually it's going to break one way or another. Usually when it breaks down, it tends to actually spike real far down. This one did a little trickery where it spiked down a little bit and then spiked back up. But usually if there's a breakdown, that's usually an indication to sell. And so that was for Icon. And now going on to Neo, you could see, let's see, just plot the trend line. It's not that difficult, to be honest. 1, 2, 3, 4 confirmations, and then this will be the reversal, so that's 5 on the weekly. Let's say that was in the past and then it broke through. There's only 2 right here. Perhaps if we go from the candle, this might be it. If we zoom in from the candle, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. This could be a good trend. This could be a good trend. If we go down into the daily, perhaps we'll get a better picture. See, that doesn't confirm. That messed it up a little bit. So you got to go into the daily to really make sure. If we bring this over here, I really don't see any particular trend that we could put for Neo, because I'm only getting 2 touches. And remember, you want 3. This right here would be the most accurate trend because there is a touch right here. There's a touch right here. You could also say there's a touch right here. So that is 1, 2, possibly 3, 4. And then there's another touch 5. And then there's another touch 6. But this one didn't really count. So I'm going to say here's 5 touches. Once again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Excuse me, 4 touches. This came very close, but it never hit. So this would have been a good buy zone right here if it would have broken out, right here, if it would have broken out of this trend line in the upward fashion, which it did. So this is a good buy zone. And then if you would have bought anywhere between here, now you could see that it's going up. And if we bring it down into the hourly, perhaps we could get even more technical with it. So what's the trend right now? If we bring this up right here, seems to have hit 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So we're in a nice uptrend now for Neo. And I know support and resistance when it comes to horizontal lines isn't necessarily trend, but what I like to do is look for previous support and resistance, and if it broke out of it. So I'll put this right here because this hit right here, 1, 2, between these 2 candlesticks and these 2 candlesticks is the more conservative resistance that we kept on hitting once and then twice. And then we just broke through it, but we went back down it. And so once we broke through, this would have been a good time to buy. Really a good possible time to have bought in if you would have drawn the trend lines and you would have drawn it, say, and you wouldn't have seen any of this going on. You would have only seen that it was starting to go up, and you saw it up to, say, this point right here. What you might have wanted to have done is to create the horizontal line at the previous resistance, which seemed to be right here, 1, 2 touches, 3 touches, and then 4 touches. And so possibly right here would have been a good buy because it broke through the previous resistance. Or if you wanted more confirmation, you could have waited until it broke through and then came back down and touched the previous resistance and made it support and then spiked back up. Or you could have simply waited until all of this played out and then you saw the breakout, and right when you saw that it broke out to the top as opposed to below, then this right here would have been a good buy opportunity. And that's literally one of the very first things that I do when I start graphing out my charts. And that's going to wrap up this introductory to Trendlines video. I hope it was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. I'm going to have a lot more videos on technical analysis coming out soon, along with all of the trades that I do, and I'm tracking all of my trades, and I will put them all up publicly for you to see once they hit or don't hit. So that's going to be very, very exciting. And with saying that, let's get to the moon together. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye.